Since I opened Beginning Your Mystery about a week ago, I've received some great questions, and I'd like to take a minute to just respond to these and also say thank you to everyone who sent them in and who's taken the course and signed up for Mystery Writing Mastery. The first question was from Carol. What kind of access do students have to you? For anyone who has taken a course or taught a course during quarantine, there are basically two options, synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous means everyone's on Zoom at the exact same time. Asynchronous means that you pre-record so that people can digest the material at their own speed. This course is going to be asynchronous. So I have pre-recorded the lecture materials and the exercises so that you can learn at your own pace. With the exercises, you can choose to send them to me, and I'll offer comments and, with your permission, include them with first name only in the course section so that students can share ideas and see how others work out these scenarios. Questions are encouraged, and I'm hoping to build up the FAQ sections and record new material to address students' concerns. I'd love to make this as interactive as possible, but also as accessible as possible. So even though it's going to be basically asynchronous, I'm going to try to respond to your questions through email and then also through recording little additional exercises and videos like this. I do offer manuscript critiques, but I do that through Humber College and through Flying Books. But that's not really a course, that's more one-on-one work. And that is really useful, very time-consuming, but also very expensive. The next question is, do you have plans to create a community for students to discuss these ideas, like a Facebook group? And this came from Heather. It's a great idea. And as soon as I read that, Heather, I thought, yes, I absolutely do have that idea now. So yeah, I'm hoping to share student questions and exercises with your permission, using first names only, and with privacy concerns respected, because I know that's a really tough and important part of creative writing instruction is, respecting the privacy of students. If you're stuck on an exercise, that means that you can see how other students have interpreted the exercises. And as to a Facebook group, yeah, it's a great idea, and I would love to do that, and coming soon. So thank you. The last question comes from Lily. I have been thinking about how hard it is to write crime fiction in modern times with DNA, forensics, CCTVs, etc. Advice. This is a great question, Lily, and it's definitely something that I have struggled with, and I love writing contemporary crime fiction. I mean, to me, I feel like it allows you to write something that hasn't really been written before, but that obviously comes with more difficulties. So here are 5 ways that I've sort of tried to address this. First of all, consider alternate time periods and histories, and even alternate universes if you'd like. There's nothing wrong with writing a story set in the 1980s or the 1800s or the 1600s. Anything like that is fine. Also, alternate universes, different worlds. I mean, all of those things have different imaginative work that you have to do, but they're not wrong. So that's totally fine to do. As an example, the book and the movie No Country for Old Men involve a 1980s state-of-the-art tracking beacon that's in this bundle of money. And it also involves people crossing the border where having a lot of security cameras and walls and barbed wire and stuff would just ruin the story. So it's not wrong to set it then. Number 2, put yourself into the protagonist's place. An amateur sleuth doesn't have to know every aspect of forensics. If you're using the scenario that we developed in Beginning Your Mystery, who you are affects where that story goes. If you're somebody who doesn't know anything about the cops and you go there and they say, I'm not going to help you, I'm not going to show you any of the evidence against your friend. Okay, so where do you go? Next step, maybe you go to the scene of the crime and you look around there. Maybe the next step is you look for security footage. So putting yourself in and using your own interests and your own abilities and your own shortcomings, right? You don't have to know every aspect, and you can use that in your story. Number 3 is fake it a little bit. And there are two ways to take this. One, you can set your story in a slightly idealized world where some of that technology either doesn't exist or isn't as prevalent. And I think if you read a lot of cozies, that's what they're doing, right? A book set in, the Granville Island shopping center, where the detective runs like a cafe for cats. That's just going to be a little bit different than a police procedural. So her world or his world is going to be different, and it will be about talking to those suspects. And that's totally fine. That type of story has a different emotional center, and it's not so much about being realistic as it is about being fun. That's not wrong. The second way to fake it is to have that technology drop in and out of the story in ways that are either not noticeable or that make your detectives work harder. The classic example of this is your protagonist goes to meet a suspect in a dark warehouse or a dark forest or whatever, and their cell phone suddenly stops working. It's not getting bars or the power runs out. We've all seen that. It's a little hacky, frankly, but I think it's on the table and something to think about as long as it makes your detectives work harder, right? If the bad guy pulls a gun and takes your detective's phone and smashes it, nobody's really going to think too much about, oh, that's not realistic. It's when it happens the other way, where technology magically helps your detective. The bad guy is phoning in for more reinforcements, and, her phone suddenly loses bars. That's where I would throw the book away and say, oh, that's crap. But, anything that makes your detectives work harder, that adds to the conflict, will ultimately add to the detective's efforts to overcome that. And I think that that's totally valid. Number 4 is to do a little bit more research. Talk to people in the criminal justice system, read up on criminology, read up on police procedure. You don't have to know all of it, but if you talk to somebody for about an hour, you'll probably get a good sense of how they go about their job. And there's lots of great books and lots of great documentaries that will cover aspects of that too, right? So if I was writing a police officer, I would try to talk to people in that occupation. I would also try to do a little bit of reading, and then you would adapt that for your story. So, how cops are represented in stories is often very different than how they actually go about their jobs. And, that's totally okay, right? You have a story to tell, and it's up to you to find the truth in that story and to do enough research so that you can write that credibly, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to be a manual for, becoming a lawyer or something like that. Okay? So research is great. The last one, and I think you're going to hate me for this, Lily, but just embrace the difficulty, right? It's going to be harder to write in a world with DNA, forensics, and cameras and things like that. But it also means that even though it takes you a little bit longer to find a solution, when you do, it's going to be a new solution. It's going to be something that nobody's really thought of. And you might be the first person to address this new technology or this aspect of daily life. And here's where I can offer a real world example, which is when I revised the story Hollywood North, I wanted to set it during the quarantine because so many people were saying, oh, you can't set anything during the quarantine, or you can't, it's going to be so hard to write crime fiction, or it's going to be so hard to write anything. And I was just kind of thinking, well, yeah, it's going to present new challenges and new dangers to characters, right? That idea of you might get infected by just doing your job, just being out there asking questions and trying to work as a private detective is now a lot harder and a lot more dangerous. I think that was great, though. So I revised this story, and, just at every step, I had to think, what would Wakeland be doing differently now, right? Where would he get his mask? When would he put on or take off his mask? What would the the criminals or the suspects do when he comes in contact with them. And you know, to me, that was a really fun challenge. I don't know if I'll set every story in, you know, coronavirus times, but I'm certainly glad that I took a stab at writing one story that was in that. So hopefully that helps. If you have questions, please send them sam@samwiebe.com, SAMWIEBE.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will add to this as I can. And good luck with your writing.